Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior professional from the world of social impact and philanthropy from New York, USA, Mr. Toby Usnick. Toby, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ashutosh. It's great to be with you and your colleagues.
Thank you. Toby is the principal for philanthropic impact, communication, and social impact consultancy. He's an author of two books, and all of you know I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of two books titled The Caring Economy: How to Win with the Corporate Social Responsibility and Connecting the Dots, Building Your Network and Legacy. So, Toby, before we start talking about anything else, I'd love to know about your own journey and
Mhm.
what took you to corporate communication and social impact.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I would say the narrative that drives me, it has driven me through my career, and I'll take you through it briefly, is the international. I've always been mildly obsessed with the international, with the other, trying to get out in an
Mm,
adventurous way. My story begins, I was one of five young boys to my mom and dad. We were born in Ohio. And then my father died when I was two, and my baby brother was one. And a couple of years after that, my mom remarried my wonderful stepfather, and he was a what we called ourselves corporate gypsies. It was
mm,
the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We were moving. He was with most of his career with BASF, the German
yeah.
chemical conglomerate.
Mm,
So every 2 years, the family moved all around the country.
mm, mm,
And that made us all quite adaptable and also made, I think, the way our parents trained us or raised us was to
mm,
be um, involved, to be responsible, and to be of service. They didn't say it that way, but I now see with hindsight that they were very much about community and service and not just themselves.
mm,
And that was instilled in all of us. So as we moved, my mom in particular introduced us to a lot of folks from different circles. We had an exchange student from the Philippines when I was in second grade. We
mm,
had a similar young fellow from Malaysia when I was in sixth grade. We
mm,
had friends when we lived in the Chicago suburbs. Two different couples. One had been a State Department couple, and the other had been with British Overseas Airline, which is
mm.
now British Airways.
Yeah.
The Walshes and the Eroskins. Those two couples and my parents were attached to the hip because they all loved bridge. And so
Mm,
even as we moved on in different parts of lives, they lived everywhere. We were moving around. They almost intoxicated me with their stories about when they lived in Bombay, Mumbai, and when they
mm,
lived in the Bahamas. And so my parents, even though we were basic middle class Midwesterners, they exposed us to the international quite a bit, and I was just smitten. So
mm,
by the time college came, well, actually high school, I applied for a Rotary scholarship to go abroad. And at that time, we lived in New Jersey in Hackettstown, and I had lived. They didn't send anyone abroad that year because there was some infighting, I guess, in the chapter. So I
mm.
saved my money working at McDonald's and bought a backpack, and that was when Freddie Laker introduced transatlantic discount
Yeah.
air travel.
Mm,
So I got a standby ticket, and I went from New York to London, where the Eroskins then lived, the British Airways folks. And
mm.
then I spent 2 months backpacking as a junior in high school throughout Europe. Changed my life forever.
Oh, wonderful.
Fast forward to college, I did in fact, I was just emailing with a friend today from that backpacking area, a Swedish friend concerned about the state of affairs in the US.
Mm,
But it's 45 years ago.
yeah,
Those friendships made it really rich. And so
absolutely. Mm,
by college, I did a liberal. I'm a very much a generalist in the sense of I like encyclopedic institutions, and I'm a student of history, and so I did a liberal arts degree, arts and sciences, at a small college in Virginia called Hampton-Sydney. Um, and its motto is forming good men and good citizens since 1776, the year the college was founded. And so that setting reinforced what my parents had taught us about being of service and being good citizens and being good gentlemen. It still is an all-male college, but there were a lot of women's
yeah.
colleges nearby, so that's how that worked. But anyway,
Mm,
there I forged a sort of international degree by doing history and French. I did a junior year program in Vienna and then a junior program in Paris. Came back to the United States and started working and realized I could make a career out of international education. So I did a master's at University of Pennsylvania in university administration, and I financed that degree by being a study abroad advisor because I'm a big believer in study abroad. So I sent Penn students abroad, and then I finished that MS and went to Columbia for a PhD program in international comparative education. And one of the deans I'd worked with there recruited me to work for their junior program. It's called Reed Hall Program in Paris. So there again, I financed my degree by working for Columbia. And that's when I got my Fulbright fellowship. So I went to Belgium for a year, Brussels,
Toby,
to
if I can
study.
interrupt you for a minute, I'd like to move to the work that you're doing
Got
because
it.
we have only 25 minutes.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, I went after my Fulbright in the Erasmus program, I realized I didn't want to be in school forever. I was nearing 30. So I went into a recruiter placed me at American Express, and I spent 5 years there as director of international public affairs and realized that the skills and training of higher ed were helpful in communications and public affairs. So 5 years there working on all the non-US business. And then I was recruited to a tech company, a startup called Razorfish, which is still around, a consultancy. And then as life happens, there's setbacks. So in the second round of layoffs, when the bubble burst, I was out and on the job market. And then Warren Ferry, the executive recruiters, placed me at the New York Times, where I was director of public relations for about 5 years. And that was quite exciting because it was 2 months into my arrival, we had 9/11 here in New York. And the New York Times went into overdrive covering that story as we needed to do. It was painful, it was difficult, but it was wonderful to be in the thick of that because you want to be helpful when crises like that hit your country or your community. We also had on the opposite end of that spectrum, we had the plagiarism scandal with Jason Blair, which almost broke the Times. So it was crisis, crisis, crisis. Then I was recruited to go to Christie's auction house to run communications there globally for 10 years. And while there, I also initiated the green auction or the bid to save the earth, which was a sustainable effort by the company to both engage collectors and donors in trying to address climate change. And I built a network and benefited four environmental groups. It was Conservation International, National Resources Defense Council, Central Park Conservancy, and Oceana. And for 3 years, we raised money, had fun celebrity studded events, charity auctions, and made a difference. And that led my CEO to ask me to launch our first ever corporate social responsibility program ever in the art market, which we called Art and Soul, art being core to our mission, and soul being what differentiates us from other organizations. And then we built that around pillars such as philanthropy, volunteerism, and sustainability. And then after about 10 years there, I launched my own consultancy, Philanthropic Impact, and started to focus a lot on China and trying to help the new Chinese wealth become more philanthropic, more civic minded. And that was great until COVID hit. And then everything started shutting down. So I took a little bit of time to work for the New York Health and Hospital Corporation at the beginning of COVID as a test and trace supervisor. You may remember, Ashutosh, at that time no one knew what was happening. So we were responsible for when people had been infected to try and understand who else they had exposed so that they could be engaged. And then I saw a job at the British consulate here in New York for communications, applied for that, had that. So throughout my life with my parents, the way they raised us and volunteerism, I've been on boards, particularly around LGBTQ rights and animal advocacy. It's been woven in my narrative. And then more recently, in the past 10 years, I'd say businesses and myself have really just integrated the two fully. In India how the CSR is really fully understood, and big corporations, it's required by law to engage with it. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Thank you. So let's talk about your book, The Caring Economy.
Mhm.
What is the meaning of a caring economy?
Mhm. It is about doing more than just transactions. We know all the great leaders I know and respect have not just been about shareholder profits, but they've also been about the community and other stakeholders and being of service, not at the expense of their profits necessarily or at the expense of focusing on their core mission, but entwining it or engaging it around that business. And employees have come to expect that of their brands, particularly the younger generation. So the caring economy was my reflections on how I built corporate social responsibility at Christie's, and then showcased examples of what I thought were best in class practitioners, as well as some cautionary tales where things backfired. And I still believe to this day, even though we can call it alphabet soup with ESG and DE&I and whatnot, that the real business leaders, the smart people, the humane leaders, the ones that time will tell us we're the right leaders, are those who engage in a more responsible type of business.
And how can businesses integrate CSR without it feeling like just another marketing tactic?
Mhm. It needs to be holistic. And this is in the book, it needs to be both from the top down, but also the bottom up. So when I built the CSR program, Art and Soul at Christie's, yes, I had the direction of my CEO and support, but I also worked very hard to engage all of my colleagues, and we did it in fun ways. We had, for example, with the volunteerism program, we created something called the Arts Assembly, and what we did is we brought in our larger locations, Paris, Hong Kong, London, New York. We brought in about anywhere from 5 to 20 nonprofit organizations. They're either their executive directors or their teams, and we had a sort of an arts assembly in our galleries, and we brought in food. We got in New York, we got the Commissioner for International for Cultural Affairs to come in and open up. We had music, and we encouraged people to come down like speed dating and check out these organizations, all of which were related to arts and culture, large and small. And then to make sure in this digital era where people are not always in the office or at their desk,
Mm,
we did a little analog trick, which I still love talking about. We got little individually wrapped lifesavers, and we created a rainbow colored sign, a little post-it on each one that said, "Be a lifesaver. Come and engage in arts and
mm,
culture for a young
mm,
person." And we put that on people's keyboards if they weren't there. So we had both
mm,
the digital communications,
mm,
walk the hall, and then we had that sort of very cheap. Worldwide, we spent like $35 to get those done and out,
mm.
but it was fun. And food sells. You put
Yeah.
food out, people will come down to your events.
Fascinating. So, CSR is something, and I'll come to ESG in a minute, but CSR is something that is often talked about being top down.
Mhm.
I'd love to get your thoughts or perspective on what role do employees play in shaping an organization's CSR agenda? And give me an example if you can.
Sure, they're everything. As many my past colleague once told me, great brands are built from the inside out. So if your employer is not in lockstep with you, and you need to check with them, you need to talk with them, you need to engage
Mm,
with them. I made it a point to do a campaign. I went around the world and met in different settings with my colleagues to say, this is what we're up to. We want to build it with you. And that's how we pulse take the idea of what we call art and soul. What is the focus area going to be? So we built it together. And my goal has always been, and I believe this is the best way to do it, is to present my colleagues as the heroes in the narrative. And
mm,
when you say that, and you tell their bosses that you're not going to ask them for extra time or any
mhm,
money, you're just asking them to give you their support, let us inspire them to be, even more involved with the brand. People step up. And so it really has to require all employees. In terms of backfires, I think that there are a lot of organizations right now we're seeing with the cultural headwinds in the States. Some stores are being boycotted, like Target, because they stepped back from the DEI programs. Some
mhm,
are being rewarded because they did that. I think we need to move away from the language and just realize that responsible business, CSR, is good business. It's been proven over and over again through data and research that it's what the consumers want, it's what the employees want. So I would say let's not talk so much about the language and let's just keep on leading by
mm,
example. Let's keep on doing our core mission, which is to reward the stakeholders with profit, but not at the expense of the environment or our
mm,
people. And great leaders know that. Jamie
mm,
Dimon at JP
mm.
Morgan Chase or Larry Fink at at BlackRock, they know this.
Well said. And with the rise of ESG or environmental social governance investing, how do you see the future of CSR evolving, or do you see both of them coexisting?
I actually, it depends on who you ask, which company, which part of the world. There's a lot of
Hmm.
confusion when you translate to
Yeah.
other languages. I think it all kinds of need. I hope it kind of fades away and goes away, and we just get
Mm,
back to doing quote unquote good business, responsible business, and not focus so much on the language. I think right now because there's such a heated debate around ESG and
mm,
CSR, DE&I, I think what we need to do is keep on doing responsible business, but maybe we change the cover of the playbook.
mm,
I promise you, I've met him a few times. I have great respect for Jamie Dimon as an example that I like a lot. Jamie Dimon is not abandoning inclusion and equity. He's
mm,
just not going to necessarily go out in the streets and protest it. But I
mm.
think he's been there so long, his employees know him. He leads by
Yeah,
example. He walks the floors.
absolutely right. Well said. My next question is on technology, and you're a very, very well an accomplished corporate communications professional. You've done a lot of work in philanthropy and impact.
Mhm.
How has AI or generative AI changed the landscape of social impact in CSR?
Ashutosh, I'm glad you asked that. I am a huge advocate for AI. I teach an informal course, hour-long session for introductions to LLM. I am shocked after 2 years in the advent of ChatGPT that more people are not
Hmm.
embracing it, jumping for joy, and trying with it.
Yeah.
My overall view is, and the great researchers and leaders in the space that I read, people like Fei-Fei Li at Stanford, we want it to be human-centered. We want it to be ethical. So
Hmm.
I believe, first of all, that this is as important as the nuclear bomb or the printing press.
Hmm.
We can't begin to understand where it's going to take us, although we've got some sight of it.
Hmm.
I think that it should be incumbent upon any organization, schools, businesses, to not only require that their employees, their students are engaging with it, but to offer them training for the ethical
Hmm.
use of AI.
Hmm.
I know that AI is not going to take anyone's job, but the person who is conversant in AI is going to be more likely to get the job. I
Correct.
know, and you know, and your listeners know that if businesses don't integrate AI fully
Hmm.
into their business by the end of this decade, they're not likely to be around in
Hmm.
20 years.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer. I think it'll be like the internet. We'll probably have a hazard of guess. I'd say they'll probably be 80% good to neutral, and then they'll probably be about 20% dark and evil.
Hmm.
And that's just human nature. That's not the
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that goes with any kind of technology. But
Correct.
moving on, Toby, you co-founded ArtsCom, which is a cultural communications network. What was the vision behind it, and how has it evolved?
It's one of my children. I love it. It's a labor of love. My friend Mary Trudell, who was at the Wallace Foundation 18 years ago when I was at
Hmm.
Christie's, we co-founded it. It's meant to be focused on New York and arts and culture, and our mission is to engage the next generation of culture seekers in
Hmm.
culture institutions of New York. And it started out small and carefully curated. Now we have 86 organizations, large and small, from the Met, Guggenheim, MoMA, Lincoln Center, 92nd Street Y, as well as 6 foundations who fund the arts, Bloomberg, Philanthropies, Mellon Ford, and so forth. And those foundations fund us through a fiscal sponsorship, which allows us to keep it free to our other
Hmm.
members, large and
Hmm.
small. And what we do is we focus on, with Chatham House rules, we focus on the issues of the day. So 18 years ago, we were talking about, oh, are you going to blog? And then a few years into that, like, oh, you think social media is going to amount to anything? And which platform should you be on? Then it became, are you taking Sackler money? And are you decolonizing this
Hmm.
institution? And we hit COVID and we went into overdrive where everyone was trying to interpret executive orders and what are we going to do with masks and are we going to close? And so we were almost in a daily call situation there. Now our big challenge is to deal with the changes coming out of Washington. And
Hmm.
this is an era where we need to be a little bit more discreet. So we have a weekly call at 11 a.m. where we talk about the issues, we share knowledge. Not all these
Hmm.
institutions have general counsels. Not
Hmm.
all of them have the same issues, but what we have is 18 years of working together and trust. And so we are incredibly important, according to survey results that we've been surprised and delighted with. We are outperforming any other organization such as ourselves in the loyalty and the professional development and the fill of significance in the professional careers of our communicators
Hmm.
with the issues of the day.
Hmm. Well said. Let's now talk a little bit about philanthropy, and your organization is also Philanthropic Impact. And I've often said, you know, Americans are probably the only people in the world who give away so much. Most of us do believe in philanthropy, but most of our wealth really goes down to the next generation. It's only in the US have I noticed they give it away to different organizations. You have advised high net worth individuals on philanthropy. How does effective communication influence philanthropic impact?
Well, I think that one, it's a language thing again. Philanthropy, social impact, it's sometimes complicated depending on who you're talking to. So
Mm.
I try to just talk about social impact now because it can be
Yeah.
more applicable.
Hmm.
I think that Americans, yes, they are more charitable, and there are reasons. I think not. Some people would say it's because of tax incentives. Some would say it's because of religious, refugees that came to the United States and
Hmm.
founded. I think that it's it's part of the American history that we are both fiercely independent, but also collective in our efforts.
Mm,
And I'm hoping we'll get back to that. Right now, we're being challenged politically, I think, to be more independent.
mm,
But what I try to do is focus on the concept of social impact, whether it's with businesses or families, and tune into the greatest wealth transfer in history that's happening right now.
yeah.
And with the money, what you want and hope, and what I try to do with my clients and brands that I work with, is focus on the values,
Mm,
right? You want the values to go from one generation to the next. And I've excelled working with multi-generational families and
mm,
formally and informally and through my platform of my podcast, The Caring Economy, my books, to help try and create bespoke solutions. I really do question now how much networks are of value in, I'll say canned or off the shelf networks, where you pay dues and you get some of what you need to go to a seminar once a year or something. I believe we have the tools such as AI and platforms like yours to build our own sounding boards now, to build
mm,
our own networks. And so I try to help families and individuals think about who do you want to be sort of tapped as your sounding board, as you're discussing not only where do you
mm,
put your money, but across time, where do you put it? And so it's very fluid, but it's got to be bespoke. And I'm excited about it because I think that, and I don't mean to sound cynical, I find it very exciting to say this, but I would argue that just about every institution, sector, industry has to some degree failed us at this point
mm,
to be prepared for that which is ailing us right now, whether it's wars in Ukraine or climate. And so I believe there are new solutions to be created, and they're going to
mm,
be collaborative
mm,
and they're going to be more cross-functional. So that's where I think it's an exciting time for family offices in particular to think about the skills they need as a family across time
mm,
to have impact and be on mission versus blathering and wasting money.
mm. Great response. Toby, you have time for two more questions.
Sure.
And I want to talk to you about your other book, Connecting the Dot, which focuses on building a strong network.
Yeah.
What, in your opinion, are some of the key principles of effective networking?
Uh-huh. Shout out to my co-author and co-pilot, Samir
Hmm.
Kanuga, Indian American, by the way. At its core, the connecting the dots is sort of the metaphor, but to build your network, that's more of a numbers thing. But then to the legacy is the to what end do you build your network? So I'm a big
Mm,
believer that intention is everything, and no one is too young to start to think about what he, she, or they want to be remembered for in life.
mm,
And it's usually gonna be more than just being rich. And being famous is not an end goal. It's like, what do you want your impact to be? So the theory is that if you can think and reflect upon what your purpose is, then you can harness both the analog and digital tools, whether it's LinkedIn or a social organization, to build that network in a way that's both authentic, true to
mm,
your mission, but
mm,
also helpful to those who are you're engaging with. And so I believe in a concept of reputational currency.
mm,
You can really squander or blow a relationship if you don't manage it responsibly, if you're not ethical with it.
mm,
And that you play that forward. And then it becomes almost like surfing. If you're a surfer, I'm not, I have tried it, but once you practice, you get it. It becomes a lot more effective and efficient in every moment of your day, which is where I am in my career. I don't
mm,
waste a minute. Everything I do is on mission, including this conversation, because my purpose is to make a difference through daily discovery and adventure. So, what a
mm,
great adventure to be with you today,
mm.
Ashutosh. Talk
Absolutely.
about impact.
Mm. Thank you. And my last question to you, and it's often been seen, when people talk networking, people talk of relationship building. People, of course, talk of social media, how many likes you have, how many friends you have, how many followers you have. How can professionals balance authentic relationship building with strategic networking?
So it's again, it's the intention. You can be, well, first of all, if you reflect on what your goal or your mission, your purpose is, you'll probably be more candid with yourself about, am I in the right place of employment? And if
Mm,
not, how do I get to where I want to get? And you can
mm,
use AI and create audiences to build that very quickly,
mm,
or you can build your peer network. Then once you start to identify that, it should become almost self-edited or
mm,
self-fulfilling because you know exactly what you're meant to do. And the
mm,
good news is when you can declare that to yourself and then others, people are going to remember you and who you are and what you want to do or meant to do and are celebrated for doing, even when
mm,
you're not in the room. So people come to me all the time because of my ability to connect. But when I connect, whether it's for work or for pleasure, I try, this is sort of my secret sauce is my connective abilities.
mm,
I always have at least three common points of connection. It's not just the transactional. I want to publish a book, you're a publisher. I'll also ask, like, well, where did you grow up? And, I find out your kid has autism. And those are the things I file away that I would argue even AI doesn't really do, CRM doesn't really do it effectively. Salesforce can do it. It's all up here, which is a scary thought. But at the same time, that's how it remains authentic, human-centered, and intentional.
Very well said. And on that note, Toby, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about your book, The Caring Economy: How to Win with Corporate Social Responsibility. We covered some very interesting ground on CSR, on ESG, and how technology is really coming into handling CSR, ESG, and a whole lot of other aspects. Thank you also for talking to me about ArtsCom. You gave us some very interesting pointers on philanthropy and how uh, people, citizens of the US, I've always said, tend to give much, much more than anyone else in the world. And that's quite an amazing data. And I used to have a lot of data on that, but I can't remember it just now. You also talked to me about connecting the dots, your other book, and how important it is to be able to build networks. Thank you for speaking to me, and all the very best to you.
Thank you as well, Ashutosh, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.